So, my name is Adia, and this is the story of the sale of the island of Manhattan to the Dutch, and you'll see more. Go back to like the 17th century. You know, just dial it back. Use your imagination. Yes. Okay, you're here. We're here. We're all here. And everybody is on this plane of like pissing contests of gotta colonize it first, gotta get there first, gotta trade all the shit first, right? That's what they do. They be like that, right? And by they,
We know.
oh, we know, right? Dim white folks be like that now. So what happened was the Dutch, the British, the Spanish, the Portuguese, pretty much everybody in Western Europe was like, colonize all the shit, send out the ships, find the new lands, right? That's what happened in the 17th century. So what happened was the Dutch were like, yo, everybody else is venturing forth and finding these new places. And you know what it was about, Viv? It was about spices. Yeah, not just you spicy, babe, but like nutmeg and cinnamon and cloves and marjoram. I don't know, but like spices. And so eventually the Dutch are like, yo, we gotta get in on this because it seems lucrative. It seems like a good venture. And at that time, in the late 17th century, the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire had cut off all of the trade routes to Asia. So where you were getting this like phenomenal spice trade, no more. Sultan was like, ain't gonna happen. And so that sparked this kind of colonization phase. And so everyone moves kind of west, right? You got like Europe over here. The Americas over here. America's chillin', doing the most, doing the best. We got the most beautiful of indigenous peoples, like just living their lives as they have for centuries. And the white folks come over and say like, isn't this great? And everyone's just like, we know this is great. We've been here forever. We know. So the Dutch come over and they're like, yo, Peter Minuit, or however you say his name, like Peter M, we'll call him Sir M. We would love for you to facilitate or negotiate this trade or this purchase between Manhattan, which is in New York, and us, the Dutch. So the island that we know of us as Manhattan, the island of Manhattan. Low-key, nobody wanted that shit. It's got like boulders. You can't grow anything on it. The land is not fertile, if you will. Yeah, it gets like floods. It's got like only oyster beds and there's boulders. You know, like when there was Pangea and the glaciers. I don't know why you're laughing. Like, this is a real thing. I went to a real university, right? I know what I'm talking about. Nobody wanted it. Crazy tides. Nobody wants this island. Blah, blah, blah. Whole thing. And mind you, this is land, of course, that is known by and frequented by indigenous peoples that were already here for centuries prior to Western Europe I just want to say that outright. But to be fair, the island of Manhattan, it was not sexy land. But, you know, like, some of the stories that we get told in history classes, not mine, because I went to an all-girls private Catholic school, and they didn't talk about much. But, in other schools, I assume you know, that, like, Manhattan was sold for the equivalent of, like, $24 of glass beads. And so this took a bit of reckoning for myself.
It was going to be a hard one.
It was a very hard one. Yeah, it was a very hard one. But the narrative that we tell ourselves is that these, you know, like ignorant or miseducated indigenous peoples were duped into selling the land that was Manhattan to the Dutch. And instead, I met with this new realization that not only were the people, the indigenous peoples of Manhattan, very acutely aware of the fact of what beads and other kind of trinkets were worth, sold land that was really not prosperous in any way. I mean, you had oysters, sure. You had land, sure. But, like, you couldn't grow shit on that, right? So, value in and of itself being a thing that's ascribed by the person that's either selling or buying. And as someone who deems themselves and articulates themselves as a radical in many different ways, I was a bit taken aback by that fact. And I really had to check myself in the narrative that I was telling myself that, and thinking that the indigenous populations that were making this deal were ignorant of the fact that they were being sold land in the form of glass beads, were just that duped. That they in fact knew its value and sold it as such. So this story was one about the sale of the island of Manhattan. I don't know how much you learned about that, but I hope what you did take out of this was that I'm about to fall off the stool. And that value in and of itself is something ascribed. It's something that comes from outside of ourselves. So whether it be beads, whether it be gold, whether it be the paper money, which is absolute bullshit.
It is.
We decide what's worth it and what's not. Like right now, my bed is absolutely worth it. And that's the story of the island of Manhattan. Its sale to the Dutch from the indigenous people that lived there. And hopefully you learned something.